January prices for corn and soybeans going up the cliff. Jerry Gidel is going to weigh in on that right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, hope you are doing well after Christmas. And let's jump right in on what you think the next year will be related to prices or what's is coming. We are seeing already the January prices going up today as we record this. So we have some production numbers that the market has already absorbed.
Yes, well, it's always interesting this time of year. We're all trying to consolidate our ideas about what the USDA's might be doing with their January final production numbers and what impact there might be on quarterly stocks, which really reveals what we think about domestic demands, what kind of export trends we're getting, what kind of processing capabilities we're doing in ethanol or in soybean crush. So all those are important things that are all kind of come together here with the January 12th USDA's numbers that day, which include the final production numbers for all the U.S. major crops. Now, the the small grains report does cover a lot of these: the oats, the barley, the wheats, some other ones that in that one, and they don't tend to change, by the way, very often. But it definitely we get all these numbers are looked at and are evaluated by the USDA on this, and it's part of its yields, and also can be some adjustments in harvested areas, which is, I think, a part of maybe what's happened here in the upcoming corn and soybean reports that will be issued on Thursday, January 12th.
Yes, and I think also the market is watching the crop scenes of South America.
Oh yeah, the South American crops. I think that's part of what's I think kind of revitalized. Well, even going into the 3-day holiday, and even now as we come out of it, the shower activities that occurred in Argentina, and that which were anticipated to be pretty substantial in many areas, turned out that there was very good rains in the far northern areas of Argentina, and also in maybe half or so of Buenos Aires that had an inch or inch and a half of rain. But a lot of areas, Cordoba, Santa Fe, La Pampas, those areas, and even half of, I said, of Buenos Aires really didn't get, quarter, even less of rain, and heat's back up and building again here for the balance of the week. And so particularly at this time of year, this is really all the beans should be planted. Corn, there'll be some of that a little later on here, but and into some, interestingly enough, we even finalizing some wheat harvest down there, and there's a high percentage of the soybeans in Argentina that are double crop behind wheat. So that's interesting enough. The beans of the last few days have really been the ones that have provided the price leadership. Yesterday's performance was quite impressive for the first, say, couple hours of trade, but it didn't slip back away because it's a thin volume out here, and it always makes things quite interesting to follow when you go along and things on that. But it is a factor and to some extent that's what made today's performance I guess a little bit more impressive as we come back and covered up the the lack of follow through we had yesterday, because we snapped through some very important psychological levels, and that actually the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of trade, we went right through $15 and moved all up into the 15.15 zone in spot January beans and prices. And so, boy, in most cases in that, when you do that, you tend to end up finding some support that come into the markets, say back around $15, 15.05, stuff like that. It had a little minor support there, but ultimately, even the exports sale or export shipments we had, which were solid. We had another one of these increases in the previous week shipments and that type of thing. But there just wasn't any participation, because the fact that most of our investing community is uh, basically had some stops in the markets for the things that they might have had short, but they didn't have any buy orders in. And so that's part of the reason. But today, here we are right back again on things. And the corn and wheat also kind of rebounded with it here from the standpoint that the weather conditions in Argentina, as we mentioned, and even right now in the U.S., there's people observing a little bit what happened to the last week's cold temperatures out there in the plains. It's going to be real hard to judge what kind of damage there was done to the U.S. wheat crop, but considering some of the very nasty below 10, 15 below type temperatures we had, there's still a lot of people very cautious that something did happen with the weather we had last week. I guess we'll maybe find out more of that. We are getting the chance for temperatures to rebound here in the Midwest the balance of this week and into early next week, back into the 40s and 50s on a daily basis, which is much appreciated here in Chicago.
Yes, and talking about wheat, I think will be really interesting to look forward into the next year. Most likely, we will not have those significant rallies that we have since the war started, and then things have balanced again.
Well, yeah, the wheat market definitely has a sense that there's other places in the world that the supplies might be available. But I think the one thing that's going to be quite interesting here uh, is what happens in the Black Sea, uh, from the standpoint that Argentina's got beat up a little bit here, but there's a pretty good sized crop of wheat in Australia. Now, the interesting twist on that the quality is probably not as good as they'd like, and it could turn out to be really a substitute for corn in some cases here, because it's the excessive moisture they had just ahead or early part of harvest that really damaged things up. But I think in general that Canada's crop is maybe a little less than expected, but still very good quality this year after they had a very, very poor crop last year when I should say poor volume of crop. They had a very dry season last year, and dry seasons also jack up your protein a little bit. But from there. But the wheat markets, I think the interesting twist is that information has come out this afternoon from the financial world about the situation in the Black Sea and all the conflict and all the increasing issues here that's occurred here about infrastructure from the Russians and things like that. There's a report out just as the markets were closing that the world's reinsurers, which are really the people above their insurance companies around the world, have at least a strong portion of them have started to reconsider their coverage for the Black Sea, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and that for ships going in and out of the food corridor. And that would be a very, very interesting twist here on things as we go forward here. That would definitely make things quite interesting here. And it would impact wheat, even if the things have calmed down a little bit. Wheat is probably, though, going to be the less emotional right now. The corn market would be we've had a significant portion of the stuff moving out of Ukraine has been corn, primarily because that's what was in the ports ready to go out last spring and summer, and it didn't move until later. And that, but at the same time, the lack of shipments of sunflowers and things like that has also got the soybeans excited, just because we just talked about earlier the Argentine weather situation there.
Yes, and before we go, I think we should mention that we'll be analyzing some of the numbers of the report.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of report numbers going to be available to us before all the my numbers and also the trade numbers and that on before January 12th. The one that I think the one that's always interesting is the U.S. final production numbers, and that in general, there's been kind of relatively modest changes, except for a couple of years ago in corn, where they made a pretty significant adjustment in yields down over 3 bushels on that one. But in general, the numbers have modest changes. And the interesting twist that I think a lot of people don't totally kind of recognize in corn, at least, over the last 8 years, 6 of those last years, the final corn yield has went down versus the one that was in November. From there, and I kind of feel like that's a possibility again this time. It might not be always the impact of yield itself, because because of the dryness that we had, that really did impact the Central Plains corn production out there in Nebraska, Kansas, Western Iowa, Colorado, South Dakota, and that we had from this last year's La Nina impacted drought. That's a part of it. From there, and then and the same thing on the soybeans. Maybe the soybeans are always a little more drought tolerant crop, but in general, I'm anticipating the fact we might have a 4/10 of a drop in the U.S. average back down to the 179.9 number that we had back in October. That's about 60 million or so production decline. Now, that's not a big number, but the biggest thing right now is that the mental attitude has been that, oh well, there's always going to be a more corn around. It's always one of the traditions of commodity trading, and if we have issues with the amount of volume coming out of the Black Sea here, we're going to end up having some issues there too. So the Black Sea, and then that. Now, the other number that's always important in the January crop report is soybeans. I'm anticipating that number to be down about 0.2% from 50.2 bushels nationwide down to 50 bushels. And that one has been interesting. It's been 6 out of the last 7 years it's been lower. There's only 1 year that we had a higher number. I think that was 2018 on that year. And so on the final number versus November, but a couple tenths is not huge. We've kind of been in this 2 to maybe 0.6 or 0.5 of a range on things, but it's just another factor that in these markets that we've got to keep in mind, because it's part of the stocks reports and ending carryover stocks and that. And so those numbers are going to be watched closely. We'll also be looking at the quarterly stocks next time we talk, and that about corn and soybeans, and seeing what the USDA might be doing with their updated versions at this point. But with this uncertainty that's cropped up here about what's could be happening with the Black Seas outward shipments here, that could have a big impact possibly on how the USDA adjusts their demand numbers going forward. So, but right now we're just getting the first inklings of what might have be occurring here if the Ukrainian Black Sea food corridor is not as open as it has been up to this point.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's a kind of a special one here, but primarily because of what's happened here with the prices and also this latest news. We'll have to keep a close eye on things. But right now, at least a little bit of a bubbling higher price potential seems ahead of us here going into the 2023 year. So we'll talk in the new year, as they say.
Happy New Year.
Take care, sir.